evening. Thank you all for joining us. This regular Board of Trustees of Socorro ISD is being held June 16th, 2020, and the time is 6 p.m. This meeting will be held by teleconference. The teleconference audio can be accessed at the following toll-free number, 1-866-899-4679, using the access code 165-769-453, and through an audio feed located on our YouTube channel. Any member of the public wishing to comment on an agenda item can send the comments to the following email address, board-questions@sisd.net. On March 16th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Number one, although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by telephone call and internet access. Number two, we are meeting by use of both telephone conference call, online access, and through use of an email link for questions. Number three, if a member of the public submitted written comments in advance, the board president or a member of the administration will read the comments into record before or during the board's consideration of that item. If you would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. Number four, all other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. Number five, an audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. Number six, we apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. And number seven, if you have questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787. And now I'll do a roll call to establish we have a quorum. Mr. Morales?
I'm present.
Mr. Guetta?
Here.
Mr. Gondeta?
Here.
Mr. Garcia?
Present, ma'am.
Mr. Mena?
Present.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
I'm here.
Okay. And we do have a quorum, so we will continue with item number 2, which is our Pledge of Allegiance, which is being led tonight by Marcy Sparks. If you'll all please stand and join us.
Thank you and good evening, President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, and members of the board.
My name is Marcy Sparks, and I'm the Library Services Coordinator for SISD.
My name is Heather Sparks, and I am a 4th grader from Myrtle Cooper.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both so very much. It was so great to hear a student's voice doing the Pledge of Allegiance again. Thank you both so much. And now we will continue with item number 3, the superintendent's comments. Dr. Espinosa?
Yes, President Nájera, members of the board, I want to commend Team SISD for their hard work and sense of urgency in developing a framework for reopening our schools in the fall. You know, while the first day of school is still several weeks away, preparing for the upcoming school year, it's a lengthy process that requires a lot of planning time. So we are in our next planning phase, in which we'll be sending out a parent scheduling survey to provide our parents with an opportunity to choose the best learning model for their child, which at this time can be traditional, can be hybrid, or at home learning, as discussed by Miss Jessica Macias in last week's board workshop. However, I want I want to stress that we will honor our parents' choice to the best of our ability. They're all school districts across the country. They're having to reopen their schools through the lens of a 6 feet, which is a distance that determines how many students and staff can safely be at a campus at the same time. So I also want to make it clear that the Texas Education Agency will also be releasing additional guidelines on reopening schools next week. So all of our plans are still, I want to emphasize, they're still subject to change. So tomorrow I'll be recording a video to reiterate our updates and introducing the scheduling survey to our parents. Again, like always, constant communication with our community. That's always been a key to our success. You know, as y'all know, as the community knows, you know, it's extremely difficult for our school district to schedule classes for over 47,000 students as per their parents' request, but we will do our best as long as space permits. You know, I continue to ask our teachers, our parents, and our employees for patience as we, you know, work hard to abide by Governor Abbott's order to reopen our schools, while at the same time trying to accommodate, you know, our stakeholders who only want at-home learning, other stakeholders who only want traditional learning, and there's others who want both at home and in-person learning. You know, we're a large school district, as you know, so we have a monster of a task ahead of us. So I want to thank so much our employees, our community, our trustees, our employee associations for your continued understanding, for your patience, your flexibility, and also your cooperation. It's like I said, this is a monster of a task. On a different note, due to our current situation with the pandemic, you know, we have not been able to honor our outstanding SISD students and staff who have earned local, regional, statewide, or national accolades and recognitions. However, I know that everybody would agree that they are still deserving of a moment in the spotlight, to recognize our students and staff who have earned recent honors. You know, we have posted an article on our website along with an animated presentation. We are also sharing it on our district social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So please, to all, repost a story to share with your family and friends so that they can join us in applauding our high-performing students and staff. Again, we look forward to the day that we can all be together again for board honors and special presentations. That concludes my comments this evening, President Nájera and trustees. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Dr. Espinosa. I know trying to get back into school with all the different solutions to consider is just a monster task. And I want to thank you and the entire team SISD for all the hard work that y'all put in. Thank you.
Thank you.
We continue with item number 4, public hearings. A, Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA public notice meeting. On an annual basis, the district is required to consult with parents, community members, and educational stakeholders on the Every Student Succeeds Act, federal grant entitlements, and planned expenditures for the upcoming year. This public hearing is to be completed prior to the district committing any funds and prior to submitting the ESSA Consolidated Federal Grant application to the Texas Education Agency. The deadline to submit the application to TEA is June 30th, 2020. At this time, the public is invited to provide input regarding this public hearing by accessing the following number, 915-937-1633, during the duration of the public hearing. Again, if any member of the public has a comment to make about the Every Student Succeeds Act, please call 915-937-1633. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Starkey.
Good evening, President Nájera, members of the board, and Dr. Espinosa. It is my pleasure to come before you tonight to have our public hearing annually taken care of for our federally funded programs under the Every Student Succeeds Act. This presentation begins on page 10 of your board book. On page 11, we look at the first place where the Every Student Succeeds Act comes from. It was first passed as the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, and it's been reauthorized 8 times since then, most recently by President Obama as the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, in 2015. It has always had the goal of closing the achievement gap for our students who have economic disadvantages. It is most commonly associated with Title I, Part A, but it is also relevant to other grant titles. And again, it is now 55 years old and counting. On page 12, that's a brief history. We won't need to go into it in detail, but we have had many different steps that have gotten us to where we are today in the federal funds that we are eligible for and that we accept to improve basic programs for our students. As you can see, many presidents have had a hand in how this has evolved over the years. On page 13, these are our amounts that we are receiving as Socorro ISD in fiscal year 2021. And we will go into all of these in just a moment, but Title I Part A is the flagship for ESSA, which is improving basic programs. Title I Part C is migrant education. Title II Part A is effective retention of effective teachers, principals. Title III Part A is English language acquisition, and Title IV Part A is student success and academic enrichment. The total we are receiving under these 5 grant titles this fiscal year is below at $16,540,576. I'm happy to report that this is about $1.1 to $1.2 million more as a whole than we received last year. So that's a good thing. In Title I Part A alone, it's about $1 million more. So that is good for our students. Okay, moving on to page 14, we have Title I Part A, which is improving basic programs, and we have a quick pie graph there. By law, 70% of the funding goes straight to campuses through per pupil allotment allocation, since we are all school-wide as a district. And then after that, we have some breakup there, most notably parental involvement, and then a few others that are listed. I normally like to say that it's 70% for improving basic programs at the campus level, but that really, the amount that really goes down to the campus is probably anywhere from 85, 87, 88 directly, and then just about all of the rest of it, is used at the district level to, of course, help the schools. So now on slides 15 through 19, I'm just going to go through each of those briefly. I won't say all of the numbers, but this is what we are looking at for this year on what Title I Part A, what the allocations are going to be per school. So the first slide, which is page 15, shows all of our high schools and what each of them are going to be receiving this year in Title I Part A. And this, of course, is supplemental to all general funds and state funds that Mr. Reza handles that he'll be discussing later. So everything they get from there, this is always supplemental to that. Okay. The next slide is 16, and that shows our middle schools and what they will be receiving for Title I this year. And then the next slide has our pre-K 8 schools and what they will be receiving. Paso del Norte is going to elementary but their funding will stay as is. We have it there right now because in the application system, which is just about ready to be taken care of, they are still considered a K-8 school at the moment. And then the last two slides, there's one slide that has 101 through 113 for our elementary campuses. And then finally 114 through 133 numbers for the last of those. So that comes out to our 70% plus the required parent involvement allocations for Title I. So those are locked, loaded, and ready to go. On slide 20, we will now move briefly into the Title I Part C migrant education program, and that is exactly as it sounds. It's designed to specifically help our migrant student population overcome the challenges of mobility, cultural language barriers, et cetera. We want them to be able to succeed in school and transition to do good things just like everyone else who is not associated with the migrant lifestyle. We need to have it even for them. And if we look on page 21, our migrant funding is just about all of it is for our migrant compliance clerk / recruiter and our temporary instructional aides that go out into the schools and work exclusively with migrant students. And then teacher extra duty accounts for a little bit of that because we also have some people who do some work with our migrant student population after school. And then there's just a few other small things there. Title II Part A is, again, preparing, training, and recruiting high-quality teachers, principals, and other school leaders. This one is in the application. It is largely run by Miss Borrego and Jessica Macias, and it has to do with making teachers, principals, and other school leaders better and making them more effective, and then that gives the kids a more effective learning experience and a better education. And particularly in the law, it is listed with low income and minority. Socorro ISD has 73% economically disadvantaged. We're 93% Hispanic. So the $1.542 million that we receive in this one is quite more than what school districts that would have less disadvantage would have. On page 23 of the board book, we have the division of how these funds are expended. And again, it's all, we have an administrative specialist who takes care of 9 instructional officers. They're out in the schools all the time. They are with their elementary, they're divided into elementary, they're divided into secondary, and they are the backbone of this grant portion. And other than that, there's training, there's staff development, because that needs to be in this title in order to get all of this down to our teachers and principals and others in the schools who are deemed to benefit from such programs. Okay. Next on page 24 is Title III Part A. This is English language acquisition. This one is run by the Director of Bilingual Education, Veronica Reyes. And it is basically how it sounds. It has to do with English language learners attaining English proficiency and achieving well in English, being able to meet high standards. The biggest thing that I usually say about this one when I present it is that this is like supplemental on top of supplemental, because we have general basic funds. And then after general basic funds, there is a state bilingual specific program intent code. And then this would be supplemental for English learners, even on top of that one. So it is very specified to assist our English learners in attaining high achievements. Page 25 has the breakdown of Title III Part A. And in this case, we still have quite a few boots on the ground with our instructional aides that are at the schools working with students and working with the LPAC process. And then we also have extra duty, but then we also, like Title II, you see professional development, but then also there's a bit more instructional materials and technology with Title III Part A, because we need to get those exclusively to our English language learners to further supplement their educational opportunities. And the final is Title IV Part A, which is student support and academic enrichment. And this is the one that would be the most eclectic of all of the grants. It is a newer one. It has only been in place for 3 years, whereas the others have been in place much longer, even back to 1965 in one case. And we have the well-rounded educational opportunities, safe and healthy supplemental opportunities, and then technology. A real key there is that it's more limited with this grant. It can't necessarily be for infrastructure. It can be for more innovative versions of that. So on page 27, we see the total, and we've built quite a bit in this in the past couple of years, and I'm very proud to have seen this grow and seen my colleagues and seen my boss really grow some of the programs that they've had with Title IV monies. We have our dual language instructional officer who drives right to, of course, the dual language program. This year, because our early colleges have expanded so much, we're going to have 2 full-time early college advisors. Last year we had 1. There's a lot of work with, again, dual language. The Bridge Camp is dual language. We have a big fine arts summer program. Sadly, we didn't get to have that this year for obvious reasons, but the previous 2 years were really awesome, and hopefully we're planning to bring that back. And then we also have instructional materials, technology, a lot of professional development. It relates a lot to a lot of those programs. The technology relates quite a bit to some of those, and also to our STEM efforts. And of course, we have travel, professional development with that one. So it sounds more eclectic, and when you look at the pie, it is a little bit more, has a little bit more diversity to it than some of the others. Okay. With that, those are the 5 Every Student Succeeds Act titles that we apply for and we receive, and we put those $16.5 million to use to have the best educational possibilities and opportunities for our students here in Team SISD. And so we, again, as President Nájera said in the agenda item, this is to provide the opportunity for public discussion on these programs for the 2021 school year, and any public input can be solicited at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Starkey.
Yes, ma'am.
And we haven't received any phone calls, have we?
Not on my line, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am, we have not.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am,
Thank
we
you
have not
very
received
much.
any calls.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Dr. Starkey, thank you so much for this information. Are there any questions from board members?
President Nájera, Paul Garcia, I got one question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Garcia.
Dr. Starkey, thank you for the presentation, first of all. Secondly, is it, as far as spending the funds coming from this act, is that up to the principal, or who makes that decision?
As far as spending the monies, first, Mr. Garcia, you're very welcome. As far as being able to spend the monies from this, the title, 4 of the titles, which are Migrant, Title II, Title III, and Title IV, we administer those at the district level, and we move those down to the campuses as part of district initiatives. In Title I Part A, however, where you saw the allotments that they receive, the principals have much discretion with those because that is their required allotment. And that is where the district and then the campus improvement plans come in, because each principal must build their own and then have their own comprehensive needs assessment where they determine how they are going to best spend their funds based on the needs of their campus and of the students who are attending there at that time, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, sir.
Any other questions? If not, then Dr. Starkey, thank you so much for all of this information. And this will conclude the public hearing for the Every Student Succeeds Act. Thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
We will move on to 4B, proposed 2020-2021 school district budget and discussion of proposed tax rate. The Board of Trustees is required to have conducted a public hearing for the purpose of discussing the proposed budget and tax rate to support it before the adoption of the said item. The public is invited to provide comment on the proposed budget and tax rate. Note that the tax rate will not be adopted by the board until August, when the certified property values are received from the Central Appraisal District. At this time, the public is invited to provide input regarding this public hearing by accessing the following number: 915-937-0119 during the duration of the public hearing. And now I will turn it over to Mr. Reza.
Yes, President Nakada, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. I am Tony Reza, Chief Financial Officer for the district, and this presentation is available to you on a separate link and to the public on the SISD board meetings agenda webpage at the bottom of the page. Tonight, the administration is conducting a public hearing on the proposed budget and tax rate for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The date and time of this hearing was published both in the El Paso Times and the West Texas Courier as required by law. The purpose of which is to provide the public with information on the budget and the proposed tax rate, and to allow our stakeholders to provide feedback to the governing board. We will now review the revenues for the three funds that comprise the preliminary budget that we will be recommending for adoption tonight. So if you can turn to the next slide, please. The district's general fund revenues are based on the following assumptions: that the district's property valuations will increase by 4.01% from the prior year for a projected taxable value of $10.5 billion. That our projected average daily attendance will increase by 1% to 44,264, and this is a 25% decrease from the last year's ending average daily attendance. That our weighted average daily attendance will increase by 1.76% to 61,798. That the values used by the state to determine state funding will be $11.2 billion, and that there will be a tax decrease in the maintenance and operations tax rate. So we go to the next slide, please. We'll look at our general fund revenue estimates. We're projecting total revenues in the general fund to be $443.5 million. This is an increase of 2.46% from a revised budget. Local revenues reflect an increase of $2.3 million or 2.20%, and this is due and the increase is primarily due to the increase, this is due to increased property values while being offset by a decrease in investment earnings and delinquent property tax collections. The biggest increase in revenues is in our state funds. We're projecting an increase of 8.1 million, and this is due to projected increase in our average daily attendance. Please note that the district will be using $6.9 million of fund balance to balance the budget in the general fund. So we go to the next slide, please. This is our revenue estimates for the child nutrition program. We're projecting child nutrition revenues to be at $32 million. This is a slight increase of $100,000 from the prior year. This increment is primarily in federal revenues due to the projected meals that we project to serve in 2021. We are also projecting to use $665,000 in fund balance to balance the budget for the child nutrition program. If you turn to the next slide, please. These are the revenue projections for the debt service fund. We're projecting total revenues of $60.9 million, and this is a decrease of $627,000. The decreases in local revenues are due to the fact that we're projecting a decrease in our delinquent property tax collections and in investment earnings. With respect to state funding, there is a projected decrease of $400,000, and this is due to the fact that the percentage increase in our property values is higher than the projected increase in our average daily attendance. So what's in our budget? Our budget has a commensurate general pay increase of 2% for teachers, nurses, librarians, and counselors, and all other job classes. It includes a one-time payment of $1,000 to all eligible employees approved by the board. Additional instructional positions due to the projected growth at the campuses and the expansion of the dual language program. Additional instructional positions for the special education program. Funding to implement full-day pre-kindergarten at most of our elementary campuses. An increase in funding for the TASB stipend and pay recommendations. Funding to provide laptops for the incoming freshman class. Funding to purchase 10 school buses, and funding and staff development for the state-mandated reading academies. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see the manner in which the board will adopt the budget, which is by fund and functions. The funds are represented by the column amounts and the functions by rows. So the three major funds for the board to adopt tonight would be the general fund, and we have a budget of $450.5 million. The child nutrition program with a budget of $32.7 million, and the debt service fund with a budget of $60.9 million. The grand total of these combined budgets is $544,272,919. And this is a $6.8 million decrease from the current revised budget. So if you go to the next slide, what you have here is the proposed tax rate and the impact on the average resident. As published in the newspapers, presented is a tax rate. And that current proposed tax rate is $1.365354. Note that this is a slight tax decrease from the prior year. And as you can see, there is an increase in the average taxable value of the average homeowner. This increase in values is showing a tax impact to the average homeowner of $18.72. Note that these figures are using preliminary values, and we have published the highest possible tax rate for the district. Once the certified values are received in July, the Texas Education Agency will calculate our maximum compressed tax rate. From there, we'll add the additional golden pennies and our INS pennies to get the tax rate that we must adopt. Please keep in mind that the higher the percentage value growth over the 4.1% that we're projecting, the lower the tax rate that we will need to adopt. Finally, also listed is the district's voter approved, or what we used to call the rollback rate, and this is the highest rate that the Board of Trustees can adopt without holding an election. On the next slide, submitted for your information, is a comparison of proposed tax rates for the surrounding school district. Note that some, if not all of these rates will change once each school district gets their own certified property values. As you can see currently, Socorro ISD, along with several other school districts, continues to have one of the lowest maintenance and operations tax rates. And Mrs. Nakira, that is the presentation. Are there any questions for the information submitted?
President Nakira, Mr. Mena, I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mena.
Yes, Tony, how were you able to, how can I word this? How are you calculating the taxes that are not going to be collected for next year? What variable ratio are you using?
So what I'm using is historical information, Mr. Mena. So I know historically what we've seen is how much we collected for delinquent taxes. So we've kind of lowered that amount by about 50% currently. I know that it's not going to be higher than what we've seen, and I've got a historical database going about at least 10 years on tax collections. With respect to the tax collections for the current year, we use 98% as the taxable percentage to calculate that amount, and then from there we gauge it. So historically, we've collected, at least current taxes, we collect close to 99%. You never know. And then you have the delinquent tax collections that are on top of that. So that's what we're using as a basis.
So as far as the delinquent tax collections, this year is going to be an unprecedented year due to the COVID-19. Are you using a formula for that?
No, sir. I'm using historical data that we've seen.
Just historical data.
Yes, sir. And we're almost there. In fact, we're very close to getting that data, that amount that we projected. Okay. And that amount is about $850,000 for the general fund.
Okay. All right. How many golden pennies or copper pennies do we need to use to make? And I'm just throwing this out at you to adopt these tax rates that you gave us.
So we're going to recommend to the board in August that we have the 5 golden pennies that are available to us. Now, in the current year, 2020, we were only allowed 4 golden pennies, and the board was gracious enough to approve that. We're making the assumption, and we'll recommend this to the board in August, that we adopt the 5 golden pennies, and that's embedded in that $1.365354 tax rate. If we do not have a unanimous vote by the board, then we would have to adopt only 4 golden pennies, and we'd lose about $5.4 million in state revenue.
Okay.
But this is not that, but there's no need, the board doesn't have to consider that for this meeting. It would be in August.
Right. Be in August. Thank you.
President
Are there
Nakara.
any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Ressa, it's my understanding that HB3 is fully funded for this coming year, correct?
Yes, sir, to the extent that we are. The Texas Education Agency has used the first 6 weeks of our average daily attendance to fund the district. They've stated they will hold us harmless for the 5th and 6th weeks ADA, but they will offset us by the amount of funding that we receive from the CARES funding. So to the extent that it's fully funded, it is. It's just not extra.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Are there any other board member questions? And I believe we have one call.
Okay.
And did we have one call?
Yes, we did. President Nahara, Susan Olson, Financial Services. I took a call from Mr. Tom Lane. He lives in District 5. And it reads, members of the school board, Superintendent Dr. Espinosa. My name is Tom Lane and I live in District 5. Thank you for the presentation and this opportunity to provide comment on the proposed budget and tax rate. I am grateful that Socorro ISD is holding the line on taxes and not proposing a tax increase for 2020-21, especially given the economic uncertainties that come with COVID-19. Maintaining or decreasing the tax burden needs to continue as long as we have the uncertainties of COVID-19 and economic distress. Now or in the near future would not be the time for increases in taxes or a new bond election. The presentation shows the district is projecting a 1% increase in average daily attendance to a little over 44,000 students as part of the budget projections. And on the surface, this appears to be inconsistent with national polling of parents that was recently conducted by USA Today, indicating that due to COVID-19, more than 1 in 4 parents are very likely to pursue at-home learning options and not return their children back to school. Not included in the report was information on the fund balance, except for a note that nearly $666,000 were taken from the fund balance to cover revenue estimates for child nutrition in fiscal year 2020-2021. Given the uncertainty of COVID-19, it is important to understand not only the amount of the fund balance, but the overall direction of the fund balance with the budget. Is the fund balance projected to increase or decrease? In closing, I appreciate the vigilance that Team SISD uses in its budgetary processes and encourage increased responsiveness to the ever-changing budgetary realities and parental preference related to COVID-19. And that was the only call.
Okay, Mr. Ressa, can you make sure that Mr. Lane has provided answers for his questions?
Yes, ma'am. We will certainly provide that information to him.
Thank you, Ms. Olson, and thank you, Mr. Ressa. If there's no further comments from the board and we haven't received any other phone calls, then this will be the end for the public hearing for the budget and tax rate. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We will move on to item number 5, district reports. I believe we have a letter addressing the district report about the mechanic and mechanic helpers pay when performing bus driver duties. Ms. Macias?
Yes, ma'am. President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. We do have a letter or an email that came in from Mr. Tommy Hill, and it reads, I would like to bring to the board's attention that mechanics, mechanic helpers, office staff clerks, or anyone else asked to drive a bus route has not been compensated on the same level as a bus driver while they have been driving a school bus route. Anyone driving a bus route should be getting the same pay as if they were a bus driver, plus compensated to their years of experience of the same pay scale as bus drivers. For example, if a mechanic has 3 years of experience and has been driving a school bus for 3 years, he or she should get bus driver wage plus 3 years of experience from the school bus driver wage scale when they drive a school bus. Thank you. Mr. Tommy Hill.
Thank you, Ms. Macias. And now I'll turn this item over to Ms. Selena Stiles.
Good evening, President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board. I'm Selena Stiles, Director of Human Resources for the district. Tonight, I will be providing the board with information as to the process we will follow in the district when a mechanic, mechanic helper, or any other CDL licensed employee is asked to drive a bus. Mechanic helpers or any other CDL licensed employee that is at a lower pay grade than a bus driver will be paid at the bus driver hourly rate for the time that they are asked to drive a bus. However, mechanics are already at the bus driver level, therefore they are compensated at the bus driver hourly rate, if not higher. In collaboration with Transportation and Payroll, the Department of Human Resources will ensure that we document the hours worked by mechanic helpers and any other CDL licensed employee asked to drive a bus when they perform duties as a bus driver so they can be compensated accordingly. We will continue to follow all payroll guidelines as to pay dates and pay deadlines. At this time, I can answer any questions.
President Nájera, Mr. Mena, I have a few questions.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mena.
Yes, Selena, how will you pay overtime? Will you pay it at the highest level? Say, for example, the assistant mechanics only make maybe 12, 13 bucks an hour. If they do the overtime as a bus driver, would it be paid at the bus driver pay?
No, sir, we have to follow Department of Labor guidelines, and so it's what they refer to as a blended rate. So it would be at a blended rate of the two rates that they have, any overtime that they earn, regardless of the position that they earn it in.
So then it would be somewhere in the middle then?
Correct, and again, that's at the guidelines of DOL. That's the law requirements.
Is that Department of Labor laws?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we also make sure that if a mechanic, a head mechanic makes about 17, 18 bucks an hour, would he keep his pay? Or
yes,
would he
so,
be driver's pay?
Correct. If they're at the same rate as the bus driver or higher, because I know some of the coordinators are asked to drive at times too, they just get they continue to receive their rate because they're already being compensated at that same level.
Okay, all right. The other thing I have, so if the assistant mechanics they're gonna get paid their seniority, say they have 10 years seniority and they come on board as a driver, they're gonna get driver's pay plus the 10-year seniority, right?
Correct.
Okay, when is this gonna take place?
As soon as the new year starts, that they return.
So this will be implemented coming in August, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Nájera?
Yes, sir, Mr. Gondeta.
A quick question for Ms. Stiles. Ms. Stiles, are we gonna implement something to keep track of this?
They're actually, so and that was part of the collaboration with Transportation and Payroll. We're gonna have them use our time clock system to identify those hours separately.
So we'll have like a different code to tap in that they're gonna be a bus driver today and.
Correct. So if they're, for example, the mechanic helper, he'll clock in for the day as his regular position. And if he's asked to drive, he'll clock out as his mechanic helper, clock in as a bus driver. When he's done as a bus driver, he'll clock out as a bus driver and clock back in his regular role.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
This is Mr. Guerra.
Yes, sir, Mr. Guerra.
Ms. Stiles, I just want to just clarify, did I hear you say the mechanic helpers will be receiving when they're driving the bus driver pay, and also the years of service?
Well, they'll get their seniority because if they have experience driving a bus, we'll apply that. And transportation will need to notify us of that, but yes, we will apply that to the rate that they're paid.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I have one more question. This one's for you.
Yes, sir.
Do we need to vote on this, or does this take place in August?
No, sir, this is, it's just a district report at this time. It doesn't require board approval.
It does not require board approval, so this will automatically take place in August then. Okay,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Stiles. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will move on to item number 6, consent agenda. Are there any items to be pulled?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I'm sorry, if you'll hold just a moment. I have 2 items to pull. I have 6E3 and 6G.
So moved.
And that was Mr. Garcia's second, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Gondeta and a second by Mr. Garcia to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items 6E3 and 6G. And I'll do a roll call for the vote. Mr. Morales,
Aye.
Mr. Guerra,
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Mr. Mena,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
and the motion carries. The first pulled item is item 6E3, which is the MOU for Public Impact Opportunity Culture Residency Design Cohort. I had some questions concerning this MOU, how many schools will be impacted and how many teachers. And speaking with Ms. Borrego, we're going to try to get more information to help to provide the board with more information. Ms. Borrego?
Good evening, President Nájera, Dr. Espinosa, and members of the board. At this time, we are going to recommend that we pull this MOU until we get more information. As I spoke with Ms. Nájera, and we're not in a hurry to get this done, as it will not take place, not this coming school year, until the next one. So we're in the planning phases. And we have a meeting scheduled with the governance, with US Prep on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll get some more, and then we'll set up some meetings so that we can get you more information before we bring the MOU. So we're recommending that we pull this item.
Thank you, Ms. Borrego. And I make a motion that we pull this item at this time.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Nájera and a second by Mr. Garcia. And now I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. And the second pulled item is item 6G. This is consider approval of adoption of policy CDA. And board members, the reason I pulled it is the policy that is in your board book is the old policy. Last month, we approved changes to policy CDA, and TASB had recommended that we remove the fact that the board will receive an annual report. And the board voted that we should still receive the annual report. So the policy that you have in your board book is incorrect. but in your Friday packet, you were sent an updated policy. So we are approving the updated policy. Is that correct, Mr. Reza?
Yes, ma'am, that is indeed correct.
Are there any questions from the board? So I make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Nahida and a second by Mr. Guerra. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you. We will move on to item 7A, consider approval of 2020-2021 school district budget. Mr. Reza?
Yes, President Nahida and Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, the administration recommends approval of the budget as presented by Fund and Function for a total amount of $544,272,919.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Mr. Gondeta. Is there any further discussion? And I will call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 7B, consider approval of the one-time payment of $1,000 for permanent substitute teachers to be paid in 2 installments of $500 each. Mr. Campoy.
Good evening, President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, Rudy Campoya, Chief Human Resources Officer for this district. Administration is requesting your approval for the district to offer the one-time payment of $1,000 for permanent substitute teachers to be paid in 2 installments of $500.
So move.
Second.
Paul Garcia.
Second. Perimena.
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Mr. Gondeta. Is there any further discussion? And I will call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Campoya.
Thank you.
Item C, consider approval of furniture, furnishings, and installation services. Mr. Reza?
Yes, President Nahida, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, solicitation RFP E2056 is to provide the Department of Facilities and Planning the ability to purchase furniture, furnishings, and installation services for the new technology building. This is a new one-year bid. We invited 273 vendors to apply. 5 responded. We had 17 no bids. We're recommending 1 vendor, that's Contract Associates of El Paso, in the amount of $562,889.98, plus any associated items or services. We have available Mr. Ianton to answer any questions, or Mr. Sam Garcia.
I have a motion.
I have a motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Morales and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further discussion? And I will call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank
Thank
you. Item D, consider approval of alternate 1, and alternate number 6 for America's high school improvements. Mr. Ianton.
Yes, good evening, President Nahara, Dr. Espinosa, members of the board, Tom Ianton, Chief Operation Officer. If you would turn to your booklet, and then I believe it's on page 196. The administration is recommending approval of alternate 1 and alternate 6 for America's high school improvements. During the February 18th, 2020 board meeting, the Board of Trustees approved a guarantee maximum price for the remaining improvements at America's high school from Bain's general contract in the amount of $21,895,870. After that was approved, the project was put out to bid, and we also included 6 alternates. If you recalled, during my presentation to the board, I stated that the 6 alternates would be an add alternate because of budget constraint. The project was, the guarantee maximum price was a little bit higher than what we had in the 2017 bond. So we pulled out 6 items, and they're listed there on the page. And we since have bid that project, and it actually has come in under the $21,895,870 guarantee maximum price, and a savings of almost $2.8 million. So with that buyout savings, the administration is recommending that we accept alternate number 1, which is the CTE food service and classroom, and that we would do alternate number 6, which is a CTE equipment exhaust system for the welding class. This will also leave approximately $618,000 in buyout savings, and along with our contingency of $500,000. We could eventually accept further alternates once the project gets underway, but administration is recommending that we keep that amount of money in the budget in order for unseen things that might come up since you add on to an existing building. So the good thing is that the numbers came in a lot less than what we had anticipated, and this is why we were able to accept or recommend acceptance of alternate number 1 and alternate number 6. We would have loved to do all of them, but we're still right on the budget for the America's High School under the 2017 bond. Administration recommends approval of alternate 1 and alternate 6 in the amount of $2,164,928.70, leaving $618,311.72 in the buyout saving.
Motion to approve.
I have a question.
Motion to approve.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
A question.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Just a moment, guys. I have a motion by Mr. Garcia, but I need a second.
So move. I'll second it, Mr. Mena.
Okay. I have a motion by Mr. Garcia and a second by Mr. Guerra. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I had a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Morales.
Mr. Ianton, why was alternate 1 and alternate 6 chose over the other 4 alternates through 2 through 5?
Yes, we visited with the administration, and of course, all these alternates they would wanted to include in it, but the administration recommended that we do 1 and 6 because it would benefit the CTE program. If you recall, or if you envision that the existence culinary arts program is next to the auditorium, that space is going to be taken over and a new function is moved there. So we were able to move it to this new function or this new area and create a much larger and a better space for the CTE food service in classroom. But it was presented to the administration, and that's what they were recommended.
Thank you.
Any other questions? As stated, I have a motion by Mr. Garcia and a second by Mr. Guerra. And now the vote, Mr. Morales,
Aye.
Mr. Guerra,
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Mr. Mena,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
and the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Iington.
You're welcome.
Item E, consider approval of change order number 001 for Loma Verde Elementary School re-roofing project. Mr. Iington?
Yes, if you recall, a few years back, we had a hailstorm, our second one that come through the district and did damage to a lot of our facility. And through the insurance adjustment claim, Loma Verde was one of those projects. Well, during the construction or the removal of the project, the re-roofing portion of it, it was found out that the existing substrate was not meeting what we had called out in the specifications. So there's an area that had to be replaced and a new system put in. I think I've been here since 2003, and I probably have brought to y'all maybe 3 or 4 added change orders, and 2 of them have been through insurance claims. Unfortunately, one was a school project. I don't like added change order, but this was done. We looked at it, and it was beneficial that we changed the system. And when we deal with the insurance adjusters, we try to put in like, kind, and quality on any of our insurance claim. I will say that Armco, our consultant, worked with the adjusters and have looked at this number and feel that this change order is appropriate, and the change order will be reimbursed to SISD through the Texas Political Subdivision Socorro ISD insurance claim. So the cost is being covered by the insurance company. With that, the adjuster of the insurance company, we're still probably $300,000 under his original adjustment. So administration is recommending approval of CMI Roofing Inc. change order number 001 in the amount of $323,400.
Motion to approve.
A second?
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Mr. Morales. Is there any further discussion?
President Nájera, Paul Garcia, I got a question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Iington, how soon do you anticipate that the roof will be fixed here?
It's done.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions?
Ms. Nájera?
Yes, sir, Mr. Gondeta.
Real quick with Mr. Iington. Hey, Mr. Iington, I really do now miss the pictures of your roof. I honestly do miss the pictures of the roof now.
Yes, sir. I'll show you some when we come back together. I thought you were going to complain about my facility report because I didn't have you standing out there on your basketball court.
No, I passed by yesterday. I passed by yesterday. I know they're going. But yeah, I go ahead. We used to complain about them, but ever since this whole thing happened where we don't see each other anymore at our meetings, you kind of miss things. So now I'm missing the pictures of our roofs of the schools.
Yes, I'll bring them back to your memories.
It's the small things we take for granted. I do have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Mr. Morales. And now the vote, Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arrington. Item 7F, consider approval of 2020-2021 board meeting calendar and agenda cycle. As in the past, the board meeting calendar was developed using the third Tuesday of the month for the regular board meetings. With the exception of March 2021, we are proposing the fourth Tuesday due to spring intercession. Are there any questions concerning the board meeting calendar?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rodriguez. I'm sorry, Mr. Guetta, and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further discussion? And I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morales,
Aye.
Mr. Guetta,
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Mr. Mena,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
and the motion carries. Thank you. Item 7G, consider approval of delegate and alternate for the TASA-TASB Convention Delegate Assembly. Delegates and alternates in each region will meet with the TASB directors to discuss the issues coming before the assembly and to clarify delegate and assembly processes. Board members, we choose a delegate and an alternate at this time to serve on the delegate assembly.
I make a motion to nominate David Morales.
Second.
Okay, we need an alternate as well.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Mr. Mena.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Garcia and a second by Mr. Gondeta to appoint Morales as our delegate and Mr. Mena as our alternate for the TASA-TASB directors, delegate assembly. Is there any further discussion? And I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morales,
Aye.
Mr. Guetta,
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Mr. Mena,
Aye.
and Ms. Rodriguez.
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you. Item 8, executive session. The meeting is to be closed for discussion with legal counsel to receive advice and discuss the status of the TEA hearing and appeal regarding the probationary contract of A. Contreras. Discussion regarding options for the possible acquisition of real property for future school site, to discuss personnel and real estate matters, and to consider administrative recommendations for Director of Transportation, assistant principal positions at El Dorado High School and Colonel John O. Inzer Middle School, academic compliance officer under Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.074. And board members, we will now leave this meeting and go to our executive session, and the time is 7:08. We will continue with new business. We are back in session. The time is 7:45, excuse me. 9, business A, discussion and possible action regarding the acquisition of real property for future school site. Mr. Blanco.
Thank you, Board President Nahara, members of the board, and Dr. Espinosa. I gave you an update on the current status regarding the possible letter of intent for the acquisition of a possible new school site. At this time, what I would need is, if the board is interested in moving forward with that letter of intent, a motion to authorize the administration to proceed with the letter of intent and the matters related thereto. And obviously, we will bring this back for final consideration for the board once that letter of intent runs its course, probably in 60 to 90 days.
Motion to approve, Butler.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Garcia and a second by Mr. Mena. Is there any further discussion? And the vote, Mr. Morales,
Aye.
Mr. Guetta,
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta,
Aye.
Mr. Garcia,
Aye.
Mr. Mena,
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez,
Aye.
and the motion carries. Item 9B1, consider approval of administrative recommendations. The first one is Director of Transportation, Dr. Espinosa. Dr. Espinosa?
Yes, President Nahara, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, President Nahara, members of the board, administration recommends Ms. Jacqueline Gutierrez to assume all the roles and responsibilities as the new Director of Transportation.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Mr. Gondeta. Is there any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Discussion real quick, Mr. Aguirre.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Gondeta.
Sue, really appreciate the person you nominated. Great woman, has been with the district for a lot of years. She knows transportation in and out. I feel that she's gonna do a wonderful job there, and she's really gonna take it to a whole new level. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Now I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. And item 9B2, the Assistant Principal A is for El Dorado High School. Dr. Espinosa?
Yes, President Nahara, members of the board, for El Dorado High School, administration recommends Ms. Nicole Matsuda to assume all the roles and responsibilities as a new assistant principal at El Dorado.
Motion to approve, Paul Garcia.
Mr. Mena, was that you as a second?
Yes.
I have a motion by Mr. Garcia and a second by Mr. Mena. Is there any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Item 9B2B, Assistant Principal for Inzer Middle School. Dr. Espinosa?
Yeah. Yes, President Nahara, members of the board, administration recommends Mr. Noe Cantu to assume the roles and responsibilities as new assistant principal at John Inzer Middle School.
I make a motion to approve.
Second, Paul Garcia.
I have a motion by Mr. Morales and a second by Mr. Garcia. Is there any further discussion? And the vote, Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guerra?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
And Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. And the final one is 9B3, Academic Compliance Officer. Dr. Espinosa?
Yes, President Nahara, members of the board, administration recommends Mr. Alfredo Gomez to assume the roles and the responsibilities as the new academic compliance officer.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Guerra and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, I'd like to discuss this. I would have liked to be during executive. However, I wasn't mic'd up. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, Mr. Morales.
Yeah, did Mr. Corey Kraft resign? Or is this a new position, or is this a position that we had existing?
No, this is a position that we had existed, and Mr. Corey Kraft did not resign.
So what happened to Mr. Corey Kraft?
No, he's still there. Mr.
So
Corey
now
Kraft
we're
did
gonna-
not resign.
So we're going to have two academic officers,
No,
compliance officers.
Yeah, we had an individual, we had another individual in this position. He resigned, so we are now replacing that individual with Mr. Alfredo Gomez.
Yes, Dr. Espinosa, you and I had that conversation back in March. You told me it was a gentleman named Mr. Carrasco. Am I correct?
Right. That is correct. It was Mr. Carrasco's position. That is correct.
Yes, and we did discuss the fact that one was a bachelor's degree and the other one is obviously a master's degree. We also discussed that this particular individual, Mr. Carrasco, I believe he was getting funded through federal programs, and that grant, whatever it was, ceased and did not. And so now we're looking at opening, we created this position and now we have to fund it. And that was one of my concerns back then. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, no, that was never a grant. I never said that that was a grant. He was never been funded through a grant. That was always
that's what I researched it. I felt that he told me he had resigned for the fact that I understood that the funding had run out, so therefore he had no position. Now you're telling us okay.
Oh, that is not correct. He was never ever funded from a grant. Never.
How was he funded previously?
Just regular general fund.
General fund. But the positions weren't the same. What position did he hold previously, Mr. Carrasco?
What was it? What's the title? A master social worker. So we closed that position and instead of hiring a master social worker, we created the academic compliance officer. So it's
President Nájera, Paul Garcia. I'm just kind of, can we be talking about this in this kind of setting?
This is Steve Blanco. As long as you're just talking generally about the position and not evaluation or performance of an individual, you can talk about it in closed session. If you prefer, we can move it back into closed session. I don't know if there's going to be a performance-based discussion or not.
Is there further discussion about this position?
Well, I would have liked to taken it back to executive for the fact that we want to get some more information on this. This position is just all of a sudden now we realize that we're going to have two chief compliance officers, and I wouldn't want to express this to the public. I think it's something we need to discuss behind closed doors. However, I wasn't mic'd up, so I wasn't able to bring that up behind closed doors or through executive session. So I don't know what's wrong with my system, but it didn't work. So I don't want to put forth any more effort unless I can speak openly.
Okay, Mr. Morales. Okay, Mr. Morales, did your mic not work during the entire executive session, or was
I heard everything. I had no input. I could not speak. Nobody heard what I was trying to say.
And at this time, we will go back to the executive session. And Mr. Morales, if your mic does not work this time, if you will please text me and we can get technology to look at it. Okay?
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
We need to announce the section that we're going into executive session under. I'm going to assume it's for a discussion regarding this individual and personnel, so it's going to be 551.074.
And do I need to do that, or did the fact that you just did it?
I just did. Yeah, no, we're clear. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Okay, thank you. We are back in regular session. The time is 8:16. Before we went to executive, we were discussing the academic compliance officer. I have a first by Mr. Guetta and a second by Ms. Rodriguez. Is there any further discussion? And I will call for the vote. Mr. Morales?
Aye.
Mr. Guetta?
Aye.
Mr. Gondeta?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mr. Mena?
Aye.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Aye.
And the motion carries. If there's no further business before this board, we are adjourned. The time is 8:17. Thank you all so much and miss getting to see you and stay safe.